Millionaire left speechless. Cleaning lady defends his daughter from dark danger at midnight. It was a night swallowed by darkness, the kind that wraps around you like a thick blanket. The kind that makes you feel like you're being watched. In a sprawling mansion, just outside the city's bright lights, wealthy businessman Thomas Blake jerked awake, heart thundering, reality crashing in on him. Time blurred at midnight, but what shattered the silence was a scream shocking and blood-curdling, echoing through the vast, empty halls. At that moment, Elizabeth, the cleaning lady, ordinary to some, but extraordinary in spirit, was more than just the woman who tidied up his daughter's room. She had a fierce, untamed look about her, one that nobody dared underestimate. With her worn hands, she grabbed a metal lamp, gripping it like a lifeline, ready to defend at all costs. Unnatural shadows flickered on the walls, twisting and contorting into shapes that made his stomach drop. Thomas raced down the cold marble stairs, each thud of his shoes a reminder of the danger slinking around his home. His daughter, Lily, was alone. What had come for her? Why tonight? As he stumbled into the foyer, he caught sight of Elizabeth, poised and fearless, staring down a figure cloaked in darkness. Fear rippled through Thomas, tightening his chest. He'd always kept his world polished and safe, a fortress of wealth. But wealth meant nothing when the threat was this primal. Then he noticed a glimmer, a blade reflecting moonlight poised in the intruder's hand. He froze, his mind racing. What cruel twist of fate had drawn a stalker to his home? The intruder lunged, but Elizabeth leaped forward, fierce determination in her eyes. In one swift motion, she swung the lamp, the metallic sound slicing through the air, a desperate shout escaping her lips. Get away from her! The tenacity in Elizabeth's voice shattered the air. Would it overpower the destruction that loomed? They stood at the edge of peril, the night thick with uncertainty and dread. What would happen next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air crackled with tension as the intruder staggered back, regrouping. Thomas felt a mix of fear and something unfamiliar, admiration. His eyes flicked between Elizabeth, who stood surprisingly tall, and the shadowy figure, whose intentions felt like poison creeping into the room. It was a standoff, a pause, everything on edge, waiting for the worst to happen. What would it take to cross this threshold? Just one wrong move, and everything could collapse. What secrets lay waiting in the dark corners of the Blake mansion? The stakes were high, and the unknown hung thick like smoke. The intruder snarled, revealing a hideous grin that chilled Thomas to the bone. And then came the question that none of them could afford to ignore: who would survive the night? The intruder advanced, a predator stalking its prey. The gleam of the blade danced under the flickering lights, casting sinister patterns that filled the room with dread. Thomas's heart pounded in his chest like a countdown to disaster. He couldn't stand by, he had to act. But what could he possibly do? He wasn't trained for this, and every second felt like an eternity. Stay back! Elizabeth shouted again, her voice steady but laced with urgency. She pivoted, her gaze fixated on Thomas, and their eyes locked. In that terrifying moment, something passed between them, a shared resolve. This wasn't just about protecting Lily. It was about confronting the darkness that loomed over them all. The intruder hesitated for just a fraction of a second. That was all Elizabeth needed. Summoning a fierce energy, she lunged forward, lamp raised high. The metal whistled in the air, narrowly missing the intruder, who quickly sidestepped, but not without a grunt of frustration. Call the police! Thomas shouted, trying to break free from the paralysis that gripped him. But his feet felt rooted to the ground, like concrete, as he fought to process the chaos swirling before him. His daughter was in danger, and yet he was helpless. Elizabeth kept pushing forward, her instinct to protect blazing brighter than the fear that threatened to consume every corner of the room. The intruder retaliated, lunging with calculated precision, and Thomas watched in horror as the blade cut through the air. Just as it looked like Elizabeth might falter, she ducked low, swinging the lamp again, but this time connecting with a sickening thud as it struck the intruder's arm. "Get away!" She screamed again, this time infused with raw desperation. The intruder stumbled back, the blade clattering to the ground, the threat momentarily subdued. Breathless, Thomas finally found his legs and dashed to the front hall phone, fumbling with the buttons as adrenaline coursed through his veins. He needed to dial 911, to summon help, but all he could hear was the ringing in his ears, drowning out everything else. Lily. Panic surged in him as he realized she was still upstairs, vulnerable and alone. He turned back to Elizabeth, who was now picking up the fallen blade, a feral look etched onto her face. "What are you doing? We need to get Lily. Stay back." She hissed, uncertain if the intruder was truly finished. They watched as the figure grappled with the shock of the blow, eyes filled with rage and a promise of revenge. But now, blood seeped from a deep cut on its arm, the scent sharp and metallic, closing the gap between predator and prey. "Get help. I'll hold him off," Elizabeth shouted, shaking with determination. It was a reckless plan, but in her heart, she knew she would do anything to protect them both. The intruder grinned, wiping the blood from its face, revealing a mouth twisted into an unnatural smile. "You think this is over?" It sneered. "This is just the beginning." The weight of its words hung in the air. Thomas's heart raced as he glanced at the door, knowing help was only a call away but feeling the suffocating tension as if he were trapped in a nightmare. Everything felt like a fragile facade, ready to crumble. Two lives tangled in a web of danger. Who would emerge from the shadows alive? Suddenly, a crash echoed from upstairs. It pierced through the thick tension like a warning shot, and Thomas's stomach dropped. Lily. What had happened up there? Did they even have time to fight? Would the intruder come back stronger and more desperate? The terror engulfed him as he bolted toward the staircase, Elizabeth close behind, determination igniting in her eyes. As they climbed the stairs, every creak of the floorboards held the promise of more danger lurking in the dark. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. In that moment, they needed to find answers and fast, before it all spiraled out of control. What awaited them at the top? The darkness of the upstairs hallway swallowed them like a hungry beast. Thomas's pulse thundered in his ears as he reached the landing, adrenaline propelling him forward. Lily. He called out, the name spilling from his lips like a desperate prayer. Each syllable echoed back, mocking him in the silence. Elizabeth was right beside him, her grip tight on the blade, a fierce sentinel ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The air felt electric with tension, and every shadow seemed alive, clutching at their fears with icy fingers. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. They moved cautiously through the corridor, glancing into the rooms. Nothing seemed out of place, just the dark, empty halls that echoed back their anxious breaths. "Where are you, Lily?" Thomas's voice cracked, panic wrapping around his throat. The closer they got to Lily's room, the more dread gnawed at his insides. The room stood at the end of the hall, and as they approached, a shudder ran down Thomas's spine. There was a sliver of light under the door, but what could it mean? He paused, rooted in place, afraid of what they might find. "I'll go first," Elizabeth said, but before she could take another step, the door burst open. "Dad!" Lily's voice rang out, terrified and breathless. She rushed forward, hair tousled, eyes wide with fear. The sight of her sent a wave of relief crashing over Thomas, but it was quickly eclipsed by a surge of protectiveness. "Thank God you're safe," he replied, pulling her into his arms. The warmth of her small body steadied him. But then, through the open door, a shadow flitted. Elizabeth's instincts kicked in. "Get back!" she shouted, her tone lethal as she swung the blade with alarm. Thomas turned just in time to see the intruder barreling toward them, the same unnerving smile plastered across its bloodied face. "Did you really think you could escape me?" it spat, lunging forward. Elizabeth reacted on pure instinct, raising the weapon high, but her strike went wide as the intruder sidestepped with uncanny agility. "Run!" Thomas yelled, urgency cutting through the haze of fear. He shoved Lily and Elizabeth toward the stairs and positioned himself like a shield between them and the threat. It wasn't just a struggle to survive, it was a battle for their very souls. The intruder's eyes glinted with malice, and it lunged again, faster this time. Thomas's heart raced as he sidestepped, feeling the rush of air as the blade just missed him. But he wasn't the target, Lily was. "Get away from my daughter!" he roared, adrenaline igniting a fire deep within him. He couldn't let this monster win. He had to protect them both, he had to fight back. Elizabeth hadn't wasted a second. She swung again, catching the intruder off guard. The blade connected this time, and a scream tore through the air, sharp and piercing. But it was more than just a scream, it was a warning. "Run!" Thomas shouted again, his voice breaking the spell of confrontation. With a swift move, he grabbed Lily's hand, pulling her back toward the stairs. "Go! Get help!" Elizabeth stood her ground, eyes fierce and wild. "No! I can't let it get away." Before Thomas could respond, the intruder recovered, eyes blazing with fury. "You think cutting me will stop me? This is only a taste." The promise twisted Thomas's insides with dread. As his mind raced, Thomas glanced back at Elizabeth. She was still poised for battle, but Thomas knew time was running out. They were surrounded by darkness, and they needed to escape. "Lily, stay behind us," he instructed, fear laced in his voice. With a nod of resolve, they scrambled backward, retreating down the hall as Elizabeth prepared for the next assault. The clash of the metal echoed in the house, a relentless reminder that this battle was far from over. And as they reached the top of the staircase, something dark lingered just beyond their fight for survival. Something promised that this was only the beginning. Would they be able to escape the growing shadows? With a frantic tug at his hand, Thomas pulled Lily behind him. The chill that wrapped around them felt alive, pulsating with this strange energy that filled the air thick enough to choke on. Elizabeth's stance was unwavering, but Thomas could see the beads of sweat tracking down her brow. A single moment stretched like an eternity as they all braced for the next move. "Stay low," she whispered urgently, her eyes darting between the darkness and the flickering glow from the damaged chandelier overhead. This fight wasn't just for survival, it was a raw clash against an evil that sought to claim them all. As the intruder advanced, a wicked smile never leaving its lips, Thomas felt the floor creak underfoot, as if even the house was trying to warn them all of the doom that awaited. "You think you can protect her?" it mocked, its voice slithering into Thomas's ears like venom. "She's already part of this." "No!" Thomas shouted, his voice breaking the tension. "You won't touch her." He lunged forward instinctively, but a quick swipe from the intruder sent him crashing against the wall. Pain shot through his ribs. He gasped, trying to stand, but felt the very world tilt around him. "Help him!" Elizabeth yelled, stepping in front of Thomas, blade raised high. Her determination burned strong within her, but the intruder was nothing if not unpredictable. It feigned a retreat, only to suddenly charge ahead with inhuman speed too fast to properly follow. "Lily!" Thomas managed to grunt, forcing himself up, clenching his teeth against the pain. The sight froze his heart. The monster's elongated fingers reached for his daughter, who stood stiff, eyes wide with uncomprehending terror. A shriek pierced his heart, forcing adrenaline to surge through him. He couldn't let fear shackle him down. "Run to the kitchen!" he shouted to Lily, trying to rally whatever strength he had left. "Now!" But the sound of slicing metal filled the air again. Elizabeth swung the blade, a desperate arc of silver slicing through the dark. The strike grazed the intruder's arm, leaving a deep gash that dripped with a black, viscous substance, like tar off an industrial machine. A furious howl echoed, reverberating through the walls of the house. "I'll take pleasure in making you witness her demise," the intruder sneered, its gaze now fixed solely on Lily, the glimmer in its eyes burning with a primal hunger. "No!" Thomas bellowed again, launching toward the intruder, fueled by desperation. He crashed into its side. The two stumbled, kicking up dust as their bodies collided. But this monster was stronger. It spun around, throwing Thomas off like a rag doll. He hit the ground hard, vision flickering as he fought to stay conscious. "Elizabeth!" He gasped, desperation flooding his chest as he struggled against the disorienting haze. She gritted her teeth and glanced back, measuring him and Lily with a fierce intensity. "Just get to safety, you two. I won't let it take you." The intruder lunged again, this time towards Elizabeth, but Lily, still frozen for a heartbeat, suddenly found her voice. "No. Let her go." Terror-wrapped urgency propelled her forward, and it was enough to catch the creature off guard. The hearts of the three adults stopped at the same time, Elizabeth's swing suddenly faltering, Thomas's limbs moving to shield, and the intruder momentarily hesitating at this unexpected burst of bravery from a child. "It has you," the creature hissed, inching forward, fingers beckoning like wraiths from another realm. In that fraught silence, something shattered, the weight of reality pressing down hard, lifting expectations into a dreadful crescendo. "Get away from her!" Thomas rumbled, pulling himself up one last time, determined to fight for what mattered most, but as the confrontation escalated, Elizabeth stumbled, caught in the thick web of chaos that enveloped them, one that promised agony while unfurling dark secrets yet to be unearthed. And then came the sound that sent icy dread coursing through them all, the telltale creaking of the front door swinging open behind them. What new horror awaited? Just beyond the threshold. Thomas's breath caught in his throat as he turned toward the doorway, dread gnawing at his insides. The door swung open with a slow, sinister creak, as if the house itself was releasing a held breath. Shadows poured in, a dark tide rising against the flickering light. Elizabeth's head snapped around, eyes wide. "Stay alert," she hissed. Her voice was strong, but the fear lurking inside was palpable. Lily shivered, gripping Thomas's hand tightly. "Daddy, I don't want to be here anymore," she whispered, fear cracking her voice. The intruder, momentarily distracted, turned its burning gaze back to them. "Ah, a new player. How delightful." It sneered, a grin splitting its face far too wide as it paced like a predator circling its prey, oblivious to the danger lurking just beyond the door. Thomas's gut twisted as he struggled to remain upright. "We need to go," he yelled, motioning for Lily to move toward the kitchen. But neither of them could budge. The air was thick with fear and despair. The newcomer at the door was just a silhouette at first. Thomas squinted, trying to make out who or what had come to join this nightmare. But in a blink, the figure stepped inside, revealing itself under the dim chandelier light. It was a man, tall and imposing, with sharp features and an unreadable expression. The flicker of the chandelier cast violent shadows across his face, turning him into a creature of unpredictability. "What is going on here?" he demanded, his voice tinged with authority yet laced with uncertainty. "Don't let it fool you," Elizabeth shouted, raising her blade defensively. The sudden shift in focus sent confusion swirling like smoke around them. The intruder let out a deep, echoing laugh. "Look at them, all so desperate." It glanced at the newcomer with derision. "You think you can stop me? Get out. Now." The man commanded, stepping forward with surprising steadiness. Yet an uneasy tremor ran down Thomas's spine as he wondered whose side this man was really on. Just then, chaos erupted. The intruder lunged at the newcomer, claws outstretched, and the man dodged aside. Elizabeth swung her blade again, but it was an errant strike, faltering under the pressure of so many moving parts. "Lily, we have to get away." Thomas shouted again, trying to force her toward the kitchen, his mind racing. But the intruder was already on the move back toward his daughter, the bloodlust igniting anew in those dark eyes. "Your fight is with me," the newcomer yelled, but his attempt to distract the creature seemed futile. It spun, snarling. Thomas's heart thundered in his chest. There was a growing tension in the air, an unspoken dare, a clash of wills waiting to explode. He couldn't let fear rule over them any longer. "Lily, remember what we practiced," he urged her, strength bubbling back into his voice. "You need to find safety. Get to the kitchen." "No." The girl dug her heels in, defiance rising in her small frame. "I want to leave you." Thomas felt like the world was crashing down around him as he wrestled between the instinct to protect his daughter and the imperative to escape this hellish scenario. The intruder howled in frustration, clearly unhinged by Lily's voice, and it lunged again, moving with the grace of a deadly serpent. For a split second, time stood still, and all he could do was watch as it went for the girl. Then, in a flash of desperation, the man from the doorway lunged forward. The two collided, and the house shook as if it would crumble around them. But while the others fought, another presence stirred in the shadows, a quiet whisper that promised more danger lurking just out of sight. What secret lay hidden in the very walls they trusted for safety? The impact of the bodies clashing sent shockwaves through the room. Thomas flinched, instinctively drawing Lily closer as he tried to shield her from the chaotic whirlwind of violence that exploded before him. The man struggled against the creature, a desperate athleticism that momentarily held its ferocity at bay. Elizabeth bellowed, "Thomas! We can't just stand here." Her voice sliced through his panic, and he felt the urgency boil over, propelling him to action. Yet every attempt to move forward was met with an invisible weight, pressing down on him like a shroud. The flickering chandelier cast flashes of light and shadow across their faces, transforming friends into adversaries in the blink of an eye. The intruder, a monster with a twisted smile, roared, its claws ripping through the air as it aimed directly at the man, who remained locked in a desperate struggle. "Lily, please," Thomas begged, gripping her shoulders. "Go to the kitchen. You have to trust me." Tears glistened in the girl's eyes, fear framing her small features. "Daddy, I'm scared." "Stay. No matter what, don't come out." He released her, unable to take his eyes off the chaos unfolding. With trembling legs, Lily turned and dashed toward the kitchen, her small form slipping through the pandemonium like a ghost. Thomas felt a surge of pride mingled with a gut-wrenching dread as he watched her run. "Keep moving," Elizabeth shouted, swinging her blade at the intruder, barely grazing its jagged skin. The creature hissed, spinning around once again, and this time its focus landed on the girl, who had reached the kitchen doorway. The distance felt like a chasm, and terror clawed at his insides. Then, the man from the door regained his footing, driving the creature back. He swept forward with a precision Thomas had never witnessed, knocking the beast off balance. But instead of retreating, the monster lunged at him again, wild eyes burning with rage. "Get out of my way!" the man barked, and Thomas could only watch, a mixture of awe and fear coursing through him. The fight had escalated beyond anything he could imagine, and somewhere in the chaos, he felt a complete and utter loss of control. "Daddy! No!" Lily's cry pierced the air. Thomas's heart dropped as he turned to see the intruder shifting toward the kitchen. Panic surged through him like cold steel. "Lily! No!" He lunged, instinct carving the path as he barreled forward, desperate to reach his daughter. The man twisted, the intruder's claws mere inches from Lily's fragile frame. The kitchen door swung shut, and in that fleeting moment, everything went dark. The sudden silence crashed around them like a tidal wave. Thomas grasped at the handle, his pounding heart echoing the chaos inside him. "What happened?" he whispered, breathless. Suddenly, the shadows around him shifted. Elizabeth, her breath ragged, steadied herself near him. "We need to go now," she hissed urgently. But before Thomas could respond, a low growl rumbled from the darkness, reverberating through the walls. The oppressive silence cracked like fragile glass. Something stirred behind him. Elizabeth, he began, but the word fell from his lips like ash. The man slid out from between the shadows, his eyes wide with alarm. We're not safe here. Then, out of the kitchen, a shadow loomed, the very essence of dread. The hero from the doorway stood faltering in the encroaching darkness as the air thickened with malice. Who are you? Thomas said in a voice barely above a whisper. A grin crept across the man's face, and then he whispered, let us just say, I'm the reason you're all still alive. With those words, Thomas felt the world tilt beneath him, uncertainty churning like a storm. And then, just as quickly, another presence emerging, slipping through the doorway behind the man, pulled everyone deeper into the mystery. What waited in the shadows, patiently, for one last breath? The man in the doorway shifted, his silhouette flickering in the dim light as if he were made of shadows himself. Thomas stared, his mind racing. He had spent his life believing he knew what lurked in the darkness, but this was a fresh horror. Get back! Elizabeth shouted, brandishing her blade like a shield, carving a path toward the unseen terror. But the air seemed thickened with tension, and for every step she took, the creature drew closer. Stop! The man protested, his voice strained, you don't know what you're dealing with. Thomas's heart thudded heavily in his chest as he gripped the handle of the kitchen door, willing it to swing open, to reveal Lily safe on the other side. But the door remained stubbornly shut. With sudden resolve, Thomas positioned himself in front of Elizabeth. You're not going to touch her. He managed to croak out, the reality of the situation crashing over him. Panic filled the space just as the creature let out a spine-chilling growl, rumbling low, vibrating through him. It felt like ice creeping beneath his skin. Focus, Thomas! Elizabeth yelled, her sharp voice snapping through his fear. We can't let it drag us into that darkness. It was as if the monster thrived on their fear, feeding off their uncertainty. The intruder stepped closer, his features illuminated just enough to reveal wild eyes glinting with something dark, something monstrous. To think that this creature had evaded everyone was incomprehensible. What does it want? Thomas shot at the man, his voice barely above a whisper. It wants power, the man answered, stepping backward, his focus never wavering from the dark presence before him. And it will use anyone, even the innocent. We're not safe. Not at all. Elizabeth's grip tightened on the blade. We can't back down now. There has to be a way to stop it. Her determination fueled Thomas's resolve. What do we do? He pressed, eyes darting between the two figures, one of raw aggression, and one of feigned calm. The man exhaled shakily. To defeat it, we need to draw it back into the shadows where it belongs. Before Thomas could process this, the creature lunged again, slashing a claw through the air. Elizabeth swung her blade, narrowly missing its jagged edges, and retreating to keep it at bay. What do you need from us? Thomas called out, feeling the weight of the world crashing down on him. Just follow my lead, the man urged, this time with a spark of determination igniting in his expression. If it corners us. A thunderous crash interrupted their hurried conversation as the kitchen door burst open, gasping for air like a storm that had been waiting to unleash. Daddy! I couldn't stay inside. Lily's small voice rang out, small and innocent, yet breaking through the suffocating dread. No! Thomas shouted, panic flaring. Get back! But it was too late. The creature twisted toward Lily, its gaze locking onto her, eyes blazing with intent. Lily, run! He screamed, but it felt like his voice was swallowed by the dark rush of chaos around them. The man shot forward, grabbing the edge of the kitchen door and slamming it shut just as the creature lunged, its claws barely missing Lily's hair. The force reverberated through the frame, echoing the tension in the room. Time seemed to freeze as thin streams of light broke through the cracks of the door. Sweat dripped down Thomas's brow, and with it, the chilling realization that this fight was far from over. Stay close to me. Elizabeth cried out, her eyes darting around to assess their options. What if it comes back? Lily whispered, her small body trembling as she sought her father's reassurance. Thomas's heart ached, the words lodged in his throat. "It won't not if we stand together. But we have to keep moving." As the growl grew louder and the shadows deepened, something shifted behind the man. Another figure emerged from the dark, a tall silhouette that exuded an aura of menace, a creature more menacing than the one before. "Time to face the real nightmare," the man said, stepping aside. Thomas's stomach plummeted. What lay beyond was a truth that could tear them apart, forever. The air around them crackled with danger once more, leaving him breathless as the walls seemed to close in around his family. What waited at the threshold of the darkness? What price would they pay to survive? The darkness seemed alive, a breathing thing hungrily pressing in on all sides. Thomas could feel his heart thump against his ribs, each beat drowning out the chaotic growls echoing in the air. He turned, desperation coursing through him as he faced the man. "What do we do? It's coming for us all." "Stay on guard," the man replied, eyes fixed on the new shape emerging from the shadows. "It feeds on your fear. Show it you're not afraid." Fear was a hard pill to swallow. Thomas looked back at Lily, the innocence of her wide eyes cutting through the tension. He could sense her confusion, her unearned trust in a world suddenly awash in terror. "We have to do this for her," he said to Elizabeth, determination sparking within him even as doubt crept in. The creature that had stepped forward was tall and skeletal, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles, dripping with shadow as if crafted from the very darkness that surrounded them. It loomed in the doorway, its head cocked to one side, studying them like a predator assessing its prey. "Now!" the man shouted. He dashed toward the back of the room, dragging the heavy wooden table toward the kitchen door. "We cannot let it enter." Elizabeth followed suit, pushing with all her strength. Thomas hesitated only for a moment longer, surveying the room for anything that could provide defense. The glint of a knife caught his eye, a reminder that they could stand their ground. He snatched it from the counter as he rushed to join Elizabeth and the man. "Focus!" Elizabeth cried, voice fierce. "Shoulder to shoulder." The three of them strained against the table, one solid barrier against the approaching threat. Lily stood behind them, small and fragile, clinging to the doorframe, her little body shaking. "Stay back!" Thomas yelled at their child, his voice cracking. "We'll keep you safe." A deafening crash shattered the air, and the table screeched as the creature slammed against it, sending shocks reverberating through Thomas's body. He felt the table give way slightly, the fear creeping back in as the creature's talons scratched and scraped against the wood. Don't give in." the man roared, his fists clenched tight around the table's edge. But something changed in that moment. The shadows within the creature swirled, thick and dark, swallowing the light completely. It seemed to grin with malevolent glee, feeding off their fear, wrapping its dark tendrils around the table's legs, trying to pull it closer. "Get ready!" the man shouted, "We're going to push when I say 3. Before they could react, Lily screamed. The sound sent a jolt through Thomas, his instinct overriding every fear. "Lily!" He spun around, just in time to see her facing the creature, eyes wide with a braveness that made his heart ache. "I'm not afraid of you," she exclaimed defiantly, her small frame trembling with determination. Silence hung in the air, potent and palpable. The creature recoiled slightly, the force of her innocence cutting through. "Now!" the man yelled. The table moved, propelled by their collective will. They pushed against the creature, who momentarily faltered, momentarily surprised by the sudden fortitude. But it wasn't enough. It lunged, roaring in fury and desperation, and everything spiraled into chaos. "Hold on!" Elizabeth shouted, her voice as loud as thunder. Thomas fought against the primal urge to run, directing every ounce of his energy toward protecting his daughter. As if time slowed, the world blurred around him, the growls of the creature melding into a horrid symphony of despair. "Why did you come here, little girl?" the creature hissed, its voice dripping with venom. "Because my daddy loves me." Lily shouted, and Thomas felt the weight of her love pierce through the darkness, but the creature howled in rage, clawing at the table as if trying to tear apart their connection. The kitchen trembled, the walls vibrating with the tension. Together. Thomas cried, holding his ground, feeling the visceral pull of survival explode within him. The room erupted into a battleground as shadows swirled, pushing back against the oncoming nightmare. The air crackled with energy, the desperate drive of a father to shield his child. Would it be enough? Or would they unravel in the face of insurmountable evil? The question lingered, heavy with uncertainty, as shadows warred with light. The creature reared back, an ungodly snarl escaping its twisted maw, raw hunger sparking in its hollow eyes. Thomas could feel the grating pressure of the darkness coil around him, twisting his stomach into knots. Everything inside him screamed to look away, to flee, but he couldn't leave Lily. He couldn't abandon her to that nightmare. Push! The man roared again, his gritted teeth shining under the low light like polished stones. They heaved at the table, every muscle straining, sweat mingling with fear. Yet somehow, through the chaos, Lily's voice rang clear. "I love my daddy." She yelled, her words cutting through the shadows like a beacon. The creature paused again, its head cocking slightly, confusion flickering across its grotesque features. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like the darkness wavered. But without warning, the creature charged with a blinding speed, its shadow pouring forth to engulf them. "Get down!" Thomas shouted as he dove to the floor, pulling Lily's tiny frame with him. The table splintered towards the center where the beast had crashed against it. The sounds of wood cracking screamed in the air. Elizabeth shrieked, stumbling back, eyes wide with horror. Just as the creature's claws swept over the table, the man shouted something. "Not just fear, it's also the light within you. You must believe." Belief. The very core of their struggle. Thomas could feel disbelief creeping back in, weaving through the adrenaline and his instinct to protect. But then he thought of Lily. "I believe." Thomas shouted, the sound tearing free from his throat. "I believe in the light. I believe in you." Elizabeth followed, chanting a mix of encouragement and love, drawing strength from the depth of her own heart. The man stood tall, a pillar of defiance, echoing their cries into the charged room. The creature stumbled, the shadows flickering around it like candle flames caught in a fierce wind. It screamed, a horrific sound that felt as if it could rupture the very air. For every heartbeat that passed, its form began to fade, the shifting dark dissipating like smoke. But a portion of its unholy force surged forward, lashing out. "Lily! You have to help us. Keep believing." Thomas barked, and in that moment, he realized just how precious that belief was, how it could bind them together in defiance of the darkness. Lily's tiny hand shot forward. "I know you're scared, but you're brave," she cried, her little voice trembling yet resolute. "We love you." Just like that, the creature faltered, its grotesque body twisting painfully, the shadows clashing into one another, as if caught in a colossal struggle to escape. Thomas felt the air change, the raw energy shifting, drawing the fear from the room. Bodies pressed forward, caught in the pulse of their combined wills. The walls shook not just with tremors of evil, but vibrantly alive, mirroring their hope. Together. "Keep it steady," Elizabeth shouted, lunging against the creature. With every ounce of belief they poured, a symphonic light burst forth, radiant and warm. The creature roared again, screeching as though caught in a whirlwind. Tiny flickers of light sparked between them, illuminating the darkness. Thomas's heart raced, the election swirling between the family and creature as each struggled for dominance. Then it happened, a flash brighter than the sun, momentarily blinding. The darkness withdrew, howling in fury. They stood there in stunned silence. The creature vanished, taking with it the ferocity and shadows, leaving only their heaving breaths and the sense of victory hanging in the air, but relief was fleeting. As the dust settled, Thomas felt an unsettling emptiness fill the space where the creature had been. Was it truly gone, or simply biding its time? "Is it over?" Lily whispered, clutching her father's shirt as if it were a life-preserver. The fear radiating from her shattered any sense of calm they were meant to summon. "I don't know," Thomas admitted, holding her close. As the words slipped from his lips, a chilling breeze crept back into the room, carrying with it an old, familiar dread. The kitchen door creaked open, and a figure emerged from the shadows, their face obscured, but the unmistakable sound of wet slithering followed. "Were you looking for this?" The figure teased, pulling something shiny from the darkness. The revelation left them breathless, confusion swirling like the shadows around them. What new terror had returned to haunt them? "I want answers," Thomas called out, heart pounding in his chest as he prepared to confront whatever darkness lay ahead. But the figure only chuckled, stepping closer into the faint light, and Thomas knew, it was far from over. Thomas's heart raced as he strained to bring focus to the emerging figure. The chilling slithering noise intensified, wrapping around them like a suffocating grip. The person came into view skin pale as a moonlit night, a smile carved unnaturally wide, eyes gleaming with a mix of malice and amusement. "Did you miss me?" The voice dripped with mockery, tearing through the fragile sense of victory they'd just embraced. It was like a punch to the gut. Thomas recoiled, anger swirling within him. "What do you want?" He ground out, holding Lily tighter, feeling her small body shaking against him. "Isn't it obvious?" The figure twirled a silver dagger, its reflective edge glinting ominously. "I came to finish what I started." The chilling laughter echoed off the walls, twisting in the air. "Not if we can help it." Elizabeth spat, standing her ground even as she felt the fear creeping into her bones. They had come so far, there was no way they would back down now. "We banished your monster," Thomas shouted, gripping the knife tighter, adrenaline pumping through him. "You think we're scared? We've faced darkness before." "Is that so?" The figure sneered, advancing slowly, deliberately. "You think the shadows can truly be banished?" "Oh, come on. What do you know about shadows?" Lily exclaimed suddenly, surprising everyone. "They can't stay if you fill them with light." The room fell silent as the words sank in, reverberating throughout the tense air. Time felt suspended as the figure hesitated, confusion flickering through its eyes like a light briefly dimmed. "Clever girl," it hissed, a dangerous undertone surfacing, but Thomas seized the moment. "Now. Push into the light. Believe." Elizabeth cried, heart racing with renewed energy. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, fists clenched and ready. Thomas felt an overwhelming wave of clarity. They had fought too hard, they wouldn't let this creature tear them apart. As they focused on the warmth of their love, the very essence of their bond flooded the space around them. The air shifted, growing electric as hope ignited in their hearts. The figure sneered but stepped back, its confidence faltering. "You think love can protect you? You are naive." "No," Thomas said, his voice low and steady. "Love is what drives us to fight, to stand against threats like you." With one swift motion, they hurled their combined energy toward the creature. Light exploded from their core, cascading through the room in vibrant waves, flooding every shadow with brilliant radiance. The deep laughter of the figure turned to shrieking panic, its form flickering wildly as light engulfed it. "No. This isn't how it ends." "Yes, it is." Thomas roared, and the warmth surged, pushing the darkness into a swirling vortex. The figure screamed an agonizing sound that rattled the air. Then, in a blinding flash, the darkness shattered, the lingering terror erased like spilled ink washed away in the rain. Standing there, breathless and wide-eyed, they felt the heavy darkness lift from their hearts. "Is it really over?" Lily whispered, eyes glued to the spot where the creature had stood. I think so," Thomas said, slowly nodding, still processing what had just happened. Elizabeth gave them both a reassuring smile, but just then, a crack formed beneath their feet, and cold air rippled through the room once again, a reminder that while they had faced one terror, the world had many hidden layers waiting to be uncovered. The light began to dim, shadows creeping back, though not as thick as before. "Not yet," The voice murmured in the distance, ghostly and soft. "You've only begun." "Time to go," Elizabeth urged, grabbing Lily's small hand, bolstering them. Thomas glanced back one last time, uncertainty gnawing at the edges of their victory, but knowing they couldn't dwell on the dark. Together, they stepped toward the door, the light and love surrounding them like a protective shield. As they moved forward, they could sense the old horrors retreating beyond the threshold of hope and light, shadows merging into the past. With every step, there was a renewed sense of purpose, the understanding that their battle wasn't just against external foes but internal fears as well. They had emerged, but the journey wasn't just over. It had transformed into a powerful new beginning. "When you're faced with darkness, remember this," Thomas whispered, glancing down at his daughter. "The light is always within reach." Elizabeth nodded, curling her arm protectively around them both. They stepped out into a world that felt safer, though slightly shadowed by uncertainty. Together, Lily piped up, her voice pure and determined. Together, Thomas and Elizabeth echoed, their hearts still racing but filled with a newfound hope. As they walked away from the mansion, hand in hand, each felt a deep yearning to keep the battles of the night close, but also the comforting embrace of light and love that they forged in the face of darkness. This was their truth, their victory, and it would echo on long after the last shadows faded. Now, before you scroll away, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now. Every click feeds the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending, and OMG, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.